Suicide Prevention Coordinator for the Montana Department of Public Health and Human Services.
Okay. The story that I referenced when I was visiting with you, Carl, was about how, for some reason, the population of adult Caucasians ranging in age from the 50s to the 70s, seems to be an exceptionally high or rising suicide rate. Could you discuss that for me and tell me a little bit about the studies that you've done?
Well, I think there's not one. They're not really sure what's going on. There's some theories about what may be going on, but over the last, and it's not just. I mean, the fastest growing seems to be middle-aged Caucasians, but we're seeing an increase in all ages. But among the middle-aged men, we're seeing growing issues of financial problems, relationship problems, health problems. They all seem to start to culminate right around, that 45 to 65, and that seems to be the biggest growing age group for these issues. So in other words, financial issues. You're starting to think about retirement, and you're starting to think about whether you have enough money, and you have mortgages and student loans for your kids and all that type of stuff, and that becomes an issue. You also have relationship issues. That's often when, especially in the late 40s, many times you start to have some separations or divorces that may be occurring, which is a high stress factor for suicide. I see that all the way through most of suicides. There's some type of relational component. And then as far as health issues, you start to hit about age 50, you start having all your screens, and you start to have any type of chronic health or chronic pain that starts to become more evident, and that becomes a stressor for people, and really depends on their ability to cope with it and manage it. A lot of times those issues, when they especially can become very, very overwhelming to somebody.
Can you hang on just a second, Carl? Hold on. Hi, could I call you right back?
Yeah, honey.
Okay, bye. Carl, I'm so sorry. Now, I guess what I wanted to ask you about specifically when it comes to men, is it a deal where a lot of Montana men, they don't even think to seek help in situations like this because, that wouldn't be the, quote, manly thing to do, end quote. Is that part of the problem, the contributing factor?
Absolutely, and that's not just Montana. I mean, that's the whole Rocky Mountain region. But, our suicide rates have been high for nearly 100 years, and part of it is a cultural issue where we have that cowboy mentality of we don't talk about our problems, or if we have depression, it's seen as a weakness. Stigma is a major issue when it comes to suicide, especially in our region where people don't feel comfortable talking about it. They think there's something wrong with them, and the word that I hear a lot is that they think they're a burden. And if you think you're a burden, then you're less likely to ask for help. And that is something that is significantly different than other areas of the country where there's an openness about asking for help and going to see a counselor. It just doesn't have the stigma attached to it like we do in Montana and in our region.
Now, what about alcoholism and drugs? Do men of that particular age begin to think they can't handle it, so they turn to try to chemical dependency?
Well, I think alcohol is a major factor in suicide throughout all lifespan, throughout the lifespan. But in Montana especially, we have nationally about 20 to 30% of the people who die by suicide have alcohol in their system at the time of their death. Last year in Montana, we were close to 50%. It was right around 48%. So we know that alcohol does play a prominent role. It often starts off or is used as a form of self-medicating to deal with other emotional issues, and then becomes a problem all of itself.
All right. So as the suicide prevention coordinator, what is the message? Our website, of course, is also going to be on our radio stations, Carl. What message would you like to give men specifically in Montana from your office?
Ask for help. Don't be afraid to talk about it. These are issues. The thing about depression is now seen as one of the most treatable of all psychiatric disorders. There's your primary care providers have treatment options, and it's vital that you talk about it and then you ask for help because it's out there. Suicide is never the only option.